Let's add the contact data component. And actually that'll also be a container, not only because it's loaded via routing, but because it'll manage its own state, especially once we covered forms in React. So let me add it as a subfolder to checkout in the containers folder. I'll add the contact data folder there with the contact data.js file, so my contact data component. And there I'll create this as a class, contact data, and therefore of course extend this component element, this component object. So I'll import React and component like this from React. Now, let's see how we should create this, or what should go inside of this contact data component. First of all, though, I'll export contact data, this class. Now, in there, we can fetch whichever contact data we want, and I'll set up state to manage all these inputs. And I will not really work on the form. I will not finish it in this module because we'll have a whole module about forms and validating forms after this course module. Still, I want to fetch, let's say, the username here. Maybe I want to fetch an email, and maybe I want to fetch an address, which also is an object where I have like the street maybe and a postal code. So something like that. This could be the data I want to fetch here, and we can always continue working on that. I also need my render method, of course, and as I said, I want to have a form in there. So in the render method, we'll return some JSX, and in there, I need a div, which basically is, well, the wrapper for my contact data container. And in this div, I want to have the form which I use. Now, I'll also add a h4 tag where I say enter your contact data like this. And below that, a form using that HTML form element where I then can add the form in the way I want to add it. Now, as I said, I won't spend too much time on the form here. I will do this in the modules thereafter. So for now, I'll really just create a quick form here with a couple of inputs. Input of type text for my name, essentially. So where I will set name equal to name so that we can see for what it should be there. I'll add a placeholder where I say your name, and that should be self-closing. And then I'll add one for the email, type email, and then we got this address part. So I need one for the street and one, whoops, street written like that, and one for the postal code. So here, postal code maybe. Here, let's write your mail and your name with a capital N, just like that. I'll then, of course, also add a button, and I'll use my own button component for this. So I'll quickly import button from, and now let's go to the components folder, there to the UI folder, and to the button folder and the button.js file in there. And let's then use that button here below all our inputs here, like a component, of course. I'll say order here because that is the final button after which we do place the order. Button type therefore should be success here. And of course, we'll later also add a click listener to it. Now I want to give this contact form here some styling. So I'll add a contact data.css file. And of course, you could also create a subcomponent which handles the styling if you wanted to do that. So here I'll add contact data, maybe add a margin top and bottom and center it with auto. Then add width 80% and align all the text in the center, let's say. And let's also add a media query to limit the width on big devices, just as we did it for the checkout summary too. So here, contact data will then have a width of 500 pixels at most. With that, we get the contact data component. Now I want to load it through routing. And I will do this in a checkout container. Should be a nested route below the summary. So it should not replace the checkout summary, though we could of course do that. Instead, I want to load it below there, also to show that this is of course something you use in reality too, nested routes. So I'll import route from React Router DOM inside my checkout container. And then I use route here below my checkout summary to load something for a path, which should now depend on the path we're currently on, plus / contact data. So I'll use this props, and then we can use match URL, or also for building paths and routes, you might use path here, plus / contact data. And this should also be part of the dynamic part here, the string. So now we're loading this route in this case. Of course, we need to define what component to render. So for that, I'll import my contact data container from ./contact data, and there the contact data.js file. So let's grab contact data and let's set it up as a component down there on this route component. So there I'll pass the component prop and pass contact data, just like that. With that, let's save all the files. And now if I click continue here, here is the contact data. Now it looks pretty ugly, to be honest, because I forgot to use my contact data CSS file. I of course need to import classes from ./contact data CSS and then assign this here on the wrapping div with class name and then classes contact data. So let's quickly do that. And thereafter, this is how it looks. Now, if we load this page by reloading it, as we just did automatically, you see the query params are gone and therefore the burger is empty. Now, if I go there differently by building a burger and continuing, and then if I click on continue, you see the burger is still there, because even though the query params are lost, it doesn't overwrite the old state because we did set state, and it doesn't re-render this component as you learned. So therefore, component did mount, where we built the burger, where we set the state depending on the query params, isn't running again just because we loaded a new component. So that is why the burger still looks like this. So if we go there by clicking through the various steps, we will have a nicely styled burger. Now, again, the form is not super nice. The reason for this is that I won't finish it in this module. We'll work on this later. The one thing I want to do though is I want to make sure that all the inputs here do at least have their own line each, so that they have a line wrap thereafter and that the button also has its own line. And to achieve this, I'll simply add a styling for the input element. So I'll add a new input class maybe, where I'll say display should be block, and this will automatically add a line wrap because it's now a block element. So I'll add class name, classes input to all these inputs, and with that, looks a bit nicer. Well, now of course, sitting on the left here, but again, we'll work on that. So this is our order form. This is our summary here above it. We can still improve the styling of the contact data form a little bit by going to contact data, adding a box shadow of maybe 0, 2 pixels, 3 pixels, and this light gray, and a border of an even lighter gray like this, and adding some padding inside of it. Let's then also set box sizing to border box. So this is just some styling on the contact data component. With that, looks a bit nicer, I believe. So with that, we're able to load the contact data component. The next step is to make sure that when we click the order button, we actually do send this request to our server. Now let's build this together in the next lecture, because getting the ingredients into the contact data component now is kind of tricky, as you will see.